Good evening and welcome to this Fox News special, Saddam Hussein on trial. I'm Dan Senor. As a senior advisor to the Coalition Provisional Authority, I was in Iraq when Saddam Hussein was captured. And I was there when the U.S. and the new Iraqi government laid out the plan to bring this tyrant to justice. Saddam Hussein, as you will see, will actually be tried in a series of cases. The first is scheduled to start in October. I recently went back to Iraq, only this time with a Fox News investigative team. We had unprecedented, exclusive access to many people and places that will be at the center of this historic event. What we encountered is a country still in the shadow of Saddam. We traveled under heavy security, but the threat we faced was small compared to the dangers faced by Iraqis working to bring Saddam to justice. They spoke to us at great risk. Some have already seen family and friends murdered by terrorists, hoping to stop Saddam from being tried for his crimes. First, you'll meet the Iraqis who are risking their lives and that of their families to bring Saddam to trial. Why do you keep putting yourself in these difficult situations? Their courageous fight to condemn one of the world's worst tyrants coming up next. Even after Saddam Hussein was pulled from his spider hole and thrown in prison, investigating his crimes is a dangerous calling. Terrorists are stopping at nothing to derail the trial, including murder. Jafar Abdul-Jabbar is the lead prosecutor at the Iraqi Special Tribunal. He is appearing on camera, shedding his anonymity and the measure of personal security that goes with it for the first time.
My brother, who was also my personal driver, was killed 6 months ago.
Terrorists reached your family, and yet you're still coming on camera.
After I was told about this, I went home, had a talk with myself, and reached a conclusion. I have to do this for the sake of justice, for the sake of a fair trial.
Chief Investigative Judge Rod Juhi already knows what it's like to have the eyes of the nation on him. Last July, many Americans were transfixed by these pictures of Saddam Hussein, a dictator who for 30 years survived assassination attempts, uprisings, and the Gulf War, being hauled into court. A bigger shock to many Iraqis was that Judge Juhi allowed himself to be seen on camera. For Iraqis knew that by appearing on television, Juhi put a bullseye on his forehead, and also on his family, friends, and colleagues.
We want to show the world Iraq does have a solid legal system, and it's independent.
As you will see, the Iraqi system also differs from the U.S. legal system in many respects. For starters, in Iraq, judges like Juhi, working with prosecutors like Abdul-Jabbar, investigate the crimes and build the cases, then turn their work over to other judges who try the case. Juhi lives and works under constant guard in Baghdad's protected green zone. We met up with him there in his new offices, still under construction. Why do you keep putting yourself in these difficult situations?
It is not the issue whether I continue to work on a difficult or dangerous trial. This is my duty. We want to show the rule of law, is not the rule of revenge.
Juhi and Abdul-Jabbar have spent almost 2 years preparing the first cases set to go before the tribunal. They've called through 30 years of government documents, some recovered from Saddam's own intelligence office. Mass graves have been exhumed and witnesses located and interviewed, all while terrorist assassins and bombers do what they can to drive the country into chaos. How many witnesses have you interviewed since you began this process?
Some days I see 8 to 9 witnesses, and that is more than an hour per person. And it's not just witnesses. I've gone through thousands of documents.
This trial will expose many crimes that the people of Iraq never knew about.
Are you saying there are new crimes, new atrocities?
Oh yes, there are many other cases.
Investigators say Saddam could be tried for over 300 crimes. But for now, at least, they've focused on about a dozen. They include crimes of aggression, like the invasion of Kuwait, which resulted in the 1991 Gulf War, and subsequent violent suppression of mass uprisings in the north and the south. Crimes against humanity, like the destruction of the southern marshlands and the forced deportation of thousands of Faili Kurds to Iran. But the biggest and most notorious is the genocidal chemical weapons attack on the Iraqi Kurds in 1988. Over 5,000 people were killed and thousands more were injured, making it the largest chemical weapons attack ever against a civilian population. Saddam's campaign was intricately planned, meticulously documented, and even given a code name. Called Anfal, meaning spoils of war, Saddam targeted Kurds with mass deportations and mass murder. The scale of these crimes is one thing, but proving Saddam's guilt in a court of law is another. So despite impressive, courageous, and driven jurists like Juhi and Abdul Jabbar, it's easy to doubt a legal system atrophied for decades under Saddam's rule can handle a massive prosecution like this.
But what I'm confident about is that these judges were adequately selected and vetted, that they've been adequately trained. But once the trial starts, anything can happen.
Michael Sharf has personally trained Juhi, Abdul Jabbar, and others on the Iraqi Special Tribunal who we won't show to protect their identities. Sharf, a law professor at Cleveland's Case Western Reserve University, was recently nominated for the Nobel Prize for his work to bring war criminals to justice in Sierra Leone, the former Yugoslavia, and Rwanda. Those trials took place under the banner of the United Nations. For reasons we'll explain later, the trial of Saddam will not. But that doesn't worry Sharf. He says the Iraqi tribunal meets international legal standards.
The way they've achieved that is by having a statute that's based on the Yugoslavia and Rwanda tribunal statutes, these international statutes that fulfill all the requirements of international law.
One thing Sharf did fear is that the Americans might be pulling all the strings.
I thought that this was basically a kangaroo court controlled by the United States. The more I learned about it, the more I learned that it was actually a very valid and effective tribunal.
Some U.S. advisors are concerned that failing to start with a genocide case is a mistake. But Sharf disagrees.
I actually think it's brilliant.
Sharf says Dujil is the clearest, most manageable of all the possible cases the prosecution could bring. And he says they'll have plenty of evidence to prove one toughest element of the crime alleged, that Saddam was indeed calling the shots.
He was a leader with infinite close control. The insiders who participated in Dujal and are likely to testify are all going to make this a very strong case.
In fact, those insiders will actually stand trial alongside Saddam. They are Saddam's half-brother, Barzan Ibrahim al-Takriti, former Vice President Taha Yassin Ramadan, Awad Hamad al-Bandar, head of the Revolutionary Court, and two local Ba'ath Party officials, Kadam al-Musheki and his son, Mizher.
I can tell you these defendants have cooperated and have admitted to getting written documents or verbal orders from the Ba'ath regime to commit these crimes.
There's one more advantage to bringing this manageable, clear-cut case first, Sharf says. One that will force prosecutors to focus on and dispose of for good any broad attacks by Saddam on the legitimacy of the tribunal, its judges, or its evidence. Above me is a verse from the Quran that reads, "If you must judge, judge wisely." It is fitting that these words overlook this courtroom, where all final decisions about Saddam Hussein will be made. Under Iraqi civil law, investigative judges, not prosecutors, collect evidence and determine if there's enough to bring charges. As we told you earlier, that probe was the job of this man, Judge Rod Juhi, who defied danger by investigating Saddam's crimes at Dujil. That slaughter of a town will be the first case to be tried by the Iraqi Special Tribunal. By the time the proceedings reach this chamber, Judge Rod's work will be done, and the fate of Saddam Hussein will be in the hands of a 5-judge panel.
The tribunal was a domestic court, and certainly when they were deciding the court and its structure, the issue of American involvement in using international standards, and even whether it would be a domestic court as opposed to one of the other tribunals, had to be a conversation. Were you part of that at all as to how the makeup of the court would look like?
In the beginning, actually, I did not involve in the court. But later, when we start to set up the court exactly, and especially the rule of the evidence and the procedure. You have two stages in this: is when the law, the statute itself, Then the rule of procedure and the evidence there. It says the rule of procedure, I involve very much in this because I'm one of the people who wrote the draft of this. So we adapt most of the principles, rules from ICTY. You know, if you look at the rule of procedure in an Iraqi High Tribunal, it's look like the ICTY. However, when we get this, we also at the same time it's use our criminal procedure law, which is Iraqi criminal procedure law number 23rd, 1971, and we mix it together to let the procedure fit under the Iraqi standard. So if you look at the Iraqi High Tribunal, you find it's mixed. Some procedure it's domestic, you know, fit under the criminal procedure law, and some fit under the international standard. Yeah, and then when we finish the draft, we submit it to the Iraqi parliament, and they pass it as a law. And so this is the standard for the Iraqi High Tribunal.
How much did you sense the American presence? I know the Department of Justice set up a liaison committee. Eric Binderman and a bunch of other folks. Were they part of your world?
Frankly, it says the liaison office called Regime Crime Liaison Office, and it's not part, it's major part, because they offer a lot of help, a lot of advice, especially for the investigation, for the logistics. And the first time, which is incredible, they help us to translate most of the judgment from Nuremberg until Saddam trial. So this is the first time it's available in Arabic. So when the judges work over cases, they have case law, look at it. They have case law from ICTY, they have case law from Nuremberg, they have case law from, you know, ICTR, and all this available because the liaison office. Without them, we cannot do that. We don't have ability, budget to do that. That's one. Second, they help us with the security. They help us with the facilities. One of the major problems, when we gather all the documents, we have 21 tons of documents. 21 tons of documents. It's filled this room, more than this room, you know. So we don't have, you know, place to keep it safe and secure. The Regime Crime Liaison Office, under the Kehoe, it's his time, because in the beginning, the chief of this is his name is Greg Kehoe. I think he's attorney from Florida, and he's involved in some international work also. And he helped us to set up the security facility to keep all this document. Then set up, you know, electronic system to get this document available through electronic system, because the security facilities away from the court for the security reason. Then we have access through some electronic system. Without the liaison office, we cannot do that. Right. They help us for training. They help us for some advice. But sometimes, as usual, sometimes we listen to their advice. Sometimes we disagree. Sometimes agree. This depends on the situation.
Sure.
Yeah, but they did a huge job for us.
I know we learned a little bit last night that Michael Scharf, among other people, came and did some classes and stuff. What was his role? What was that group's role?
Michael Scharf, Mike Newton, some other fellows, they involve in first training for Iraqi judges. Iraqi judges, most of them is domestic judges. They did not involve in any international field. Most of their experiences came from, Iraqi law and domestic law. So we did not reach the standard of the international field. It's a liaison office helped us to set up the training in London, 2004. And in that time, just for the history, because I like to put this, people to understand who has favored or not. We invite some prosecutor from ICTY and CTR, and then the UN, because they control them. The UN refused to allow them came to our training or conference. Yeah, Professor Scharf, Professor Newton, other professors, they attend. and then they teach us the general principle for the international standard during the investigation and trial. And they bring Nuremberg trial, bring ICTY trial, and as examples. So they open the door for Iraqi high tribunal judges and prosecutor to continue on to study this road, you know. So I think they give us the first lesson, which is very important. Then we continue.
Right.
Yeah.
With the, I know in your particular instance, the Americans were very interested to know about when the de-Baathification was going on. Bremer and others didn't like the fact that there was going to be political involvement in the judiciary process and got much more active. Did you sense that? Did you know they were going to be so active in making sure that your work was not impacted?
Frankly, in the beginning, I did not recognize that because, you know, no one knows about if the person put something in his mind or have something hidden. Everybody is speaking in Iraq about respect the judicial process, rule of law, and the independency, and the separate between the legislature, you know, judiciary, and executive authority. Then the executive authority, through the de-Baathification, start to involve in many places. This is definitely affect not just the judiciary, not affect the rule of law, not affect everybody. A professional person like to do their work without any affection. So if someone, when he does his work and think there is a pressure on him, he cannot do it accurately 100%. For that reason, there is two kind of people. Someone said, okay, I will quit, I don't need to continue, these people maybe will affect me or affect my decision. But there is other people who said, no, I'm right, I have to fight for the rule of law, at least in my field. I have to fight for the rule of law, I have to fight for the, you know, for the future of Iraqi people, for the future of Iraqi children. If I stop right now, which means the politics will control everything later. We have to look to other nations, how they succeed. You know, they succeed because they respect the law. Yes, there is democracy. Yes, there's democracy process, but democracy should be controlled by the law. If there is no law, there is no democracy. So democracy alone means chaos, but with law, it means democracy process to improve the society. For that reason, I believe, you know, I had to fight back against, not against de-Baathification, against the affection of the politician inside the rule of law system or inside the judiciary system. Yeah. So I thought it's important, not just for me, no, for next generation in Iraq. Yeah.
Once the decision was made to sort of not impact you, did you feel any other political pressures as you were doing your job as the chief investigative judge and hopefully the chief independent investigative judge? Were there other political pressures brought to bear on you?
I like independent. This is a very nice word, you know. Frankly, it's if I feel there is any pressure, I will stop work. Okay. It's not because I respect my job. Yes, I do, but it's to work as a judge, which means work on two things, especially in a criminal court. It's two things: freedom of people, and integrity of people. So if I feel someone push me to do something, I cannot do that. Right. I have to quit at all. And I don't lose, because I'm already judge. I can work in another court. Sure. You know, I keep my position, I keep my title. Yes, it's not in this court, in different court, but at least I respect myself. Later, when they stopped doing anything, they understood there is no deal in this area with me, you know. So I feel really independent when I make my decision. Yeah.
We talked just a little bit last night on the transitional justice. In many senses, it's transitioning from Nuremberg to the ICTY to the ICTR, Sierra Leone, Cambodia, Milosevic. Well, Milosevic was part of the ICTR, and the Hussein domestic court trial. When people ask you that whole continuum, and How do you start from Nuremberg and kind of work your way through all that to your work that you did in the Hussein trial?
As I said yesterday, Nuremberg is the fundamental for all the international standard. And I can add something. Nuremberg is the beginning of this standard. Without the beginning, there is no end at all. You know, you have to start from one point, from point A. You know, then you can reach point Z. If you don't start from point A, which means there is no Z at all, because you don't start. Nuremberg built the standard for us. So it's the huge, you know, the huge creation there. And what we did after that, even ICTY, ICTR, it just continuing. The rule of law under the international standard just started from Nuremberg when they prosecute the Nazis, and then this developed. If you look at this, developed through the international community, through the UN in Europe, go to ICTY, and they found it is the state. This kind of very nice affections continue to Africa and to Middle East also. Then, and after 2003, when it's the regime, Saddam's regime, it's gone, people start to think how to bring rule of law to Iraq. If there is any opportunity to let the UN involve or not. UN, frankly, because of some politics decisions, they did not involve. And we understood in that time there is no way to pass any resolution from the Security Council to establish international tribunal to prosecute Saddam and his assistant. So as in Iraqis, we decided to bring this kind of justice to Iraq. How to do it? We look at the Nuremberg, we look at the ICTY, then we get the lesson from them. There is no accurate work, there is no 100% correct work, and all the time there is mistakes. We get this lesson, the mistakes of, the most lessons we get the mistakes of the ICTY. We like to have a justice, but we like to have at the same time accurate justice, respect the rule of law, respect the human rights principles, respect the right of accused, respect the right of victims, documents at all, and respect to have not fast, but in good timing. You know, yesterday I mentioned Milosevic. If you start in kind of the trial, and the trial took years, people will think this is, yes, it is justice, but it's useless. After 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, it's useless because people start boring. It is kind of show, something like that. Not everybody understand the standard of the evidence and the procedure. They understand there is court, there is judges, there is defense counsel, there is accused, and there is justice. And each person, even the accused himself or herself, looking for justice. And at the same time, the victim looking for justice. The victim, he's waiting 20 years. If he waited another 5 years, he finds that it's useless. At the same time, the accused said, if he's innocent, why he's waiting in jail for 3, 5 years or 4 years, or it's unfair. So we get all these lessons from Nuremberg to ICTY to Iraqi High Tribunal. So we think without Nuremberg, without ICTY, we don't have Iraqi High Tribunal.
Did you ever study Robert Jackson? Does that mean, other than being here tonight and knowing he was the chief American prosecutor at Nuremberg, was that part of that name mean much?
To be honest with you, I had no idea about Robert Jackson. Who's Jackson? Mm-hmm. There is no available Arabic book, and until late 2006, I don't speak English. So I don't have ability to study in English. So when the Iraqi High Tribunal established, we start looking in this field, you know, it's an international field. And as you mentioned, it says we have American liaison. So the American liaison start to offer some documents for us. And most of the Americans are proud about what Jackson's did and Jackson's teams did, you know, in Nuremberg. So I get some information about Jackson. Then I develop this. I study Jackson. I study what he did, then what his role, and also not just him. It's there is some other folks. I can remember Henry King also, what they did there. So this is kind of, you know, kind of experience for me, because the role of the prosecutors in the United States is close, not same, but close from the role of the investigative judge. So I study them for two reasons. One, because I'm interested. Second, to find out how to handle this kind of cases on, you know, investigation or in trial. Yeah, I study it.
What's interesting is I was doing a little research on the Hussein trial, and I noticed a couple of times where Hussein offered to the court saying, I'm guilty, as he spoke, but I want to be shot. I don't want to be hanged, you know, as the penalty. That's what a soldier is done, shot. It's so consistent with what Hermann Goering did during the Nuremberg trial. He variously offered himself up, but he wanted to be militarily shot, so he wouldn't be humiliated by being hanged. And there were other types of kind of connections to the Nuremberg trial. As you, well, I mean, from your perspective, both now being in the United States for a couple of years and for being involved in the Hussein trial, the United States' involvement in the Gulf War and Iraqi War, the concern about the arms and concern about weapons of mass destruction, and this still continues to be a debate here in the United States whether that was an appropriate precipitating event to involve himself in the war. Do you have a sense of that? Do you have from an Iraqi perspective, from your perspective, personal perspective, our United States involvement initially in the war?
If you mean about the weapons,
The mass destruction.
yeah, it says. Let me put it this way: it's I'm not in military in that time. Also, at the same time, I'm not in part of the decision, you know, in the government that time, and find out if there is kind of this weapon on. But at the same time, we have friends, and we are working with the government. And some part of the government, we understood we had this kind of weapons in Iraq. This kind of weapon in Iraq, we have it because it's important to have it, especially it says, if you look to the relationship between Iraq and Iran, we're still in war, you know, until that time. Yes, now maybe legally we're still in war. Legally, it says the fire is stopped, but we did not set up all the issues between Iraq and Iran. So, as an Iraqis, the number one, as an Iraqi citizen, number one. Number two, as an Iraqi employee. Number three, as an Iraqi employee involved in some, you know, security issues and safety. It is as investigator. I can say we had this kind of weapons, but where, I cannot tell you where, because I don't know exactly. But if you ask a lot of people, especially military and people working in some department who involved, they can tell you there is this, at least, if not the weapon, you know, ready, but at least the fundamental work for it, we can be ready, not for a long time. It says because there is a lot of department working in this issues in Iraq. So yeah, I believe we had it, but not anymore, because no one knows after 2003 war.
Sure.
Yeah.
In many senses, just from an American perspective, that issue became a little less focused. More focused was the fall of the Saddam Hussein regime, the gathering of the evidence showing how his regime had committed crimes against humanity, genocide, and that was really what was presented in the United States during that time period. And you were part of that investigative process and the trial. As your job wound down and concluded after you read the indictments, I'm sure you followed it with keen interest. Do you still follow it with keen interest?
I'm still part of the court,
yeah.
So it's I'm still follow it. It's yes, I'm here doing some work and some studies, but it's I can say I'm involved daily with my colleagues there. We have phone calls every day, maybe every week. Sometimes we exchange ideas, we listen to each other's. We submit some suggestions how to continue or how to conclude or how to deal with this case and that case. So I'm continuing. This is also you bring two parts. It's very nice. It's also in case now. It's I just finished translate the two verdicts. It's from Arabic to English. It's a merchant case verdicts, and it's published right now in case, and also working on 1991 case verdicts, and I assume it soon will be published also in case, you know. So that's kind of follow-up between me and my colleagues, because when they pass verdicts there, and they passed in Arabic, later when the verdicts affirmed from the appeal chamber, they send it to me here. You know, when I got the copies, I work on it, put some comments, send it to them, you know, and translate it, and publish it through the case.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's terrific. As these cases, though, are starting to wind down, what is it you think will be the legacy of the, let's just call them the Hussein trials?
Yeah.
What's that going to mean to the Iraqi people?
First thing, it is I hope the Iraqi tribunal conclude when it's finished its mission, because it's part of the transitional justice. Second, I hope judges and people involved in this court use it as a good lesson to teach, you know, all the Iraqis, not the Iraqi citizens or the regular people, no, all the Iraqis, you know, prime minister, president, ministers, deputies, all, and about the lesson of their mission. If someone in position, he has to look at his shoulder, what responsibility he has here. If he can hold and handle this responsibility, welcome for the position. If not, please leave this position to other person. He can handle it accurately and correctly. This is its one. Second, I think second lessons were very important. It says Iraqi tribunal teach Iraqi people, including judges, prosecutors, how to respect the human rights, how to respect the right of victims, how to respect the right of accused, whatever who's the accused, whatever the title of it. It says the accused has a rights of, you know, remain silent, defense, prosecution, and defense, you know, it says discuss the evidence and defense himself. So it's good to change the view of Iraqi people from revolution court during Saddam's regime, which is when people arrested, no one knows about them until they executed, and then have a new view, the Iraqi tribunal, open court, you know, it is in media, everything open, nothing hidden. So it's a very good lesson. And this lesson teach people what the rule of law, what the process in court, before court. So it's kind of legal education. Yeah.
This is terrific.
Oh, thank you.
This is great.